morning. Today is Tuesday, May 3rd, 2022. It is 8:30 a.m. It's my pleasure to welcome everyone to the Finance and Physical Resources Committee, fellow commissioners, staff, guests, anyone watching at home. Really glad that you're here today, taking an interest in your local government. With that, I will open up public comment. Is there anyone here from the public that would like to address the Finance and Physical Resources Committee this morning? Okay, seeing none, I will close public comment. That will bring us to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Support.
Moved and supported. Any questions or comments on the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion passes. That brings us to item number 3 from the Bureau of Equalization. Al?
Yes. Action requested. Recommend to the Board of Commissioners to accept and appropriate an additional $20,911 from the State of Michigan Office of Land Survey to the 2022 Remonumentation Program budget in the Special Project Fund. Pursuant to PA 345 of 1990, the state offers an annual grant to counties for providing survey, monumentation, and remonumentation of public land survey corners consistent with the county's plan. The 2022 General Appropriations Act Resolution 11-18-21-117 included $115,772 appropriation for the remonumentation grant. The Bureau of Equalization has since been notified that the actual remonumentation grant is $136,683, which requires an additional appropriation of $20,911.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion. Support.
Moved by Commissioner Womack, supported by Commissioner Bukowski. We'll take questions, comments, and discussion. Yes, Commissioner Bukowski.
Oh, there's Matthew. I always liked having a question for Matthew because he always has great answers.
Good morning, sir.
But I hope you didn't jinx me.
All right. I thought we were done putting in new posts in the ground and the remonumentation in the corners and all that stuff. So is this, you do this every year or what? Yeah.
Correct, yeah, so we are completed. We completed our remonumentation program several years ago. And so we are now in the maintenance phase of that program. So when we were, prior to being complete, the county general fund contributed each year to the program. Now we are completely funded through the state remonumentation grant. So what we do is we anticipate the amount that we're going to do, we build a plan around that from these amendments. Sometimes our estimates are a little bit different than what the grant funding usually comes. So currently, we're doing around 150 corners a year maintenance, and overall, we've got over 4,000 in the ground that we count.
So quick follow-up for those of us who aren't surveyors.
Yeah.
Like, does a bulldozer hit it or something and you got to square it up? Or what do you have to do at those 150 corners?
Yeah, so what we do is our county surveyor is John Wiles, who we contract with through the city of Grand Rapids. He gathers information about construction that has happened, and then we also go to areas that have not been reviewed for a while. So it is a combination of road construction, those monuments get sheared off by the road graders, and so we manage that whole inventory and we identify where that work needs to be redone.
All right, thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Yes, Commissioner Antor.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Adam. Yeah, I was going to ask you about the road construction because some of the monuments or plates are in the roads.
Yes.
And is that always going to be the case, or is there, because it's got to be zeroed in on wherever that spot is and on the earth, and we can't move them off the roads a little bit and compensate? Or
Yeah, that's a great question. We do hold those spots, and the benefit of the monument is that survey crews have a known point. So what we do is we have witness corners by nearby landmarks and trees, and we recenter and we try to repopulate that spot. So yeah, part of the maintenance is making sure that those monuments are maintained for future generations.
Okay, anyone else? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion passes. That brings us to item number 4 from the Sheriff's Office. Al?
Action requested, recommend to the Board of Commissioners to accept grant funding from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services to appropriate $2,691,432 to the 2021-22 Sheriff's Special Project Fund budget, and to authorize the board chair or designee to execute the grant agreement, approve extensions, amendments, and increases to the grant appropriation not to exceed 15% of the original award. The Sheriff's Office wishes to accept a grant from the MDHHS made possible through the United States Department of Homeland Security's FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, in the amount of $2,691,432. The primary purpose of this funding is to help cover and support costs associated with COVID-19 testing, encompassing testing costs for inmates, staff, and visitors. Eligible expenses for reimbursement include personal protection equipment, i.e. gloves, masks, COVID-19 disinfection supplies, antigen rapid test kits, confirmatory molecular testing PCR kits, and lab-related PCR testing expenses. Contractual staff related to testing, data entry, and COVID-related disinfection as required, and facility staff labor overtime charges that were exclusive to COVID-19 testing. It is highly anticipated that the actual expenditures incurred under this grant will be significantly less than the $2,691,432. The grant period is October 1, 2021 to June 30, 2022.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion. Support.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Womack, supported by Commissioner Wooden, and we'll take questions, comments, and discussion, and we'll start with Commissioner Antor.
Thank you, Chair. My concern with this, and I'm glad the sheriff's getting this money, that's not a problem. It's just the money that's out there that really seems to be being diverted in areas that I'm not sure if that was originally meant for. I see here that the cost will not be as high as what we're getting. This, it's anticipated that the actual expenditures incurred under this grant will be significantly less. My concern is just with the billions and billions of dollars that are out there, and we're trying to figure out ways to spend them. As a taxpayer, that bothers me that we have got a glut of money and we're trying to figure out the best way to spend it. I'd rather be able to not take that money, all of it, and give it back to the taxpayers in some way. I know that'll never happen, but reading what I'm reading is just like this whole COVID funding piece has gotten so far out of control that, it takes, somebody to actually figure out how do we spend it now. So again, with Sheriff, I'm not opposed to you getting the money. I'm sure you're going to use it wisely. It's just the bigger piece of what's happening at the federal level with all this spending. It just bothers me that we're kind of like, it's like monopoly money and it's not real. So anyhow, that's my only point.
Okay, anyone else? Yes, Commissioner Womack.
I have a question for the sheriff. As we're looking at the COVID-related expenses, when we went into this pandemic, the numbers projected for different county jails and prison of the opportunity for COVID to spread rapidly. Just want to talk about some of the things you did from your office and within the sheriff department that prevented us from that rapid incline of COVID, and where those expenses came from, and things you did, and where our numbers were compared to other places, because we did not have the influx that was anticipated thanks to your work.
So our staff was very diligent in keeping separation to the extent possible. We provided masks to inmates well before it was mandated. We had alternate day room schedules, which kept groups of inmates from all being out at the same time. We were cognizant on transfers if we were leaving the building to separate the groups out. So we did what we could to mitigate. We also tested on the way into the facility, had a quarantine until the lab verified test was returned before we would ever place them in housing. And we were very successful, especially during the first several waves of COVID through our community. We did have a pretty significant outbreak in January of this year. Omicron variant. We never had anybody seriously ill from the outbreak, but at one point, I think cumulatively had 160 inmates that were either positive as they came in the door or at some point became positive while they were in the correctional facility. Most of them coming in with COVID in the early parts of this year. Luckily, nobody was really ill, but it was really in no small part due to the efforts of the staff working constantly to keep everybody safe. So, and I do want to just clarify on this grant because I think it is misleading. It's up to $2.2 million. I would be shocked if our actual expenses exceeded several hundred thousand. And we don't get the money if we don't have the expense to be reimbursed. So we don't have this big account that we're drawing down that's going to have $2.2 million in it. Beyond what the sheriff's office had in terms of expenses, we have a very structured contract with our medical provider, and our medical provider under the contract with the sheriff's department did much of the labor, and they did so in far in excess of what we were actually paying that medical contractor to get it done. So there are some opportunities in this grant for us to perhaps reimburse our medical provider for costs outside of the contract as well. So that's what our intent is. It's a pretty small window. We do expect the window will be extended. That would extend into the latter part of the summer and into the fall perhaps. But it didn't start until October 1st. So it's not retroactive back to COVID.
Okay, thank you for going into the budget, because I was going to follow up on that great question from Commissioner Antor. Thank you for your great work, too.
Anyone else? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion passes. That brings us to item number 5 from Corrections Jail. Al?
Action requested, recommend to the Board of Commissioners to transfer $146,700 from the Indoor Range Air Handler and Ballistic CIP project to the Jail Intercom Replacement CIP project in the Capital Improvement Program Fund. On November 18, 2021, the Board of Commissioners authorized the 2022 General Appropriation Act via Resolution 11-18-21-117. The 2022 General Appropriation Act included $320,000 for the replacement of the Kent County Correctional Facility intercom system and $820,000 for the Indoor Range Air Handler and Ballistics project. The original intercom system was installed in 1991, and the manufacturer is no longer in business, creating barriers for further repairs. Bids for the project were received. The lowest responsive bid is approximately 46%, or $146,700 over the originally estimated project budget. The increase from the project estimate is related to additional project scope and inflationary costs. The following amounts comprise the increased amount: $59,754 scope change on parts, $20,000 scope change on labor estimated, $46,946 inflationary increase in material and labor, and $20,000 the CIP request was too low. It is recommended that an additional $146,700 be transferred from the Indoor Range Air Handler and Ballistics project to the Jail Intercom Replacement project in the CIP fund. CIP Fiscal Policy Section 4.E requires transfers between projects greater than $25,000 must be approved by the Finance and Physical Resources Committee.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Wooden, supported by Commissioner Sparks, and we'll take questions, comments, and discussion on this one. We'll go ahead and start with Commissioner Antor.
I guess, is this a question for Al? Probably.
Why don't you ask the question, we'll figure it out.
Okay, well, I just had a question about these increases. It's pretty significant, and
We'll have
Oh,
our
is this-
sheriff run with that.
sorry, Sheriff.
Right.
I didn't know if it was a you question or an Al question. Just on these increases, which is quite significant, is most of this inflationary, or is this?
There is a portion that's inflation. So obviously the cycle of a CIP is pretty extensive. And during the time from the point we originally planned the project, received quotes for the project, we had additional portions of the intercom system that became clear we also had to replace.
Okay.
So it makes sense to do it all at one time, and obviously with consistent equipment so that our maintenance staff doesn't have any issues maintaining it. So that's most of what you're seeing here in terms of a change, but there is obviously some inflationary cost.
Any supply chain problems, was that causing some of the prices to go up?
So what we did notice is lack of bidders. And we think that's because everybody's so busy and they don't wanna kind of reach out of what they're normally doing and do a project that's in a correctional facility, because inherently, most people don't want to work within the correctional facility because there's extra security requirements. So that obviously does affect our pricing at some point. We don't have the equipment on site. There could perhaps be delays. We've seen delays in other projects.
Yeah, I think that lack of bidders, it's always gonna make the prices go up for sure. So, okay, thanks for that explanation, appreciate it.
Hey, Commissioner Wooden?
Thank you, Chair. Just real quick, since what you're asking us is to transfer almost 150,000 from the indoor range handler and ballistics project to the intercom replacement, was that because there was the final cost for the air handler and ballistics project ended up being below what the CIP request was? Or is there still $150,000 delta somewhere?
Yes and no. So, we, prior to this, received bids for the ballistics range air handler system. Our initial intent was to do a full replacement of the HVAC for the range. That came in probably, I'm not good with percentages in my head, but well in excess of our CIP budget. But as an alternative project, they quoted an adjustment and adaptation to the air handler for much less cost than we originally expected to have to spend on replacement. The caveat is it's not as long a term of solution as what it would have been to completely replace it, but it will get us by for the foreseeable future. So yes, the short answer is there is revenue still, or money still left in that CIP for that project that we can transfer over to this, both projects being done completely then.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion passes. That brings us to item 6, which is the first quarter financial status report. Hi, Jeff.
Good morning, Chair. How are you?
Excellent.
Morning, Commissioners. Thanks for having me here today. I'll be fairly brief. The first quarter is always a little hard to show the variances because it's so early in the year and there's different timing for expenses and revenues and that kind of thing, but we'll go through it quickly and then I can answer your questions. So,
You don't have to go through quickly. I checked the calendar. We have nothing but
we
time.
have plenty of time.
Yeah, just,
I will speak slowly. No,
yeah, just enjoy it.
Enjoy it.
Give us all the details and no
Okay.
rushing.
So overall, through the first quarter, revenues have decreased from 17.1 million to 16.4 million, or 4.1%. And expenditures have increased 1.8% from 38.4 to 39.1. Again, not unusual at all. I don't know, do you have this report in front of you, or do you want me to scroll down on the screen? You guys have it?
We have it.
Okay, cool. Go to page 2 of the report. You can see the details for revenues and expenditures by category. You can see taxes have decreased 48.8%, and that's merely the result of timing of tax collections. We still expect to see the normal tax collections through the rest of the year catch up. You can see charges for services have decreased from 5.7 to 5.4, or 6.2%. And this is an expected decrease in internal support, so nothing unusual there. And interest earnings are actually up due to some timing variances in the mark-to-market adjustments. And please don't have me try to explain mark-to-market adjustments. I can try if you'd like, but it has to do with the value of the investments that we hold at a certain date and time. And it actually makes some wild swings when they make
Hey,
those adjustments.
Jeff, the numbering's a little confusing. It might be good just to scroll down, just so everybody's
Oh, I'm
looking at
sorry.
the
Okay.
correct page, so.
Look, it's interest and rent, 76 points, I can't even read that, 6% up from 493,871,000. That's the interest number I'm speaking about. Moving on to expenses, you can see personnel has increased from 23.1 to 24.4, 5.4%. That's consistent with our negotiated wage increases, so nothing unusual there. Supplies are up a bit from 0.44 to 0.54 million, 21.6%. That's primarily an increase in gas and oil and some uniform expenses in public safety. Capital is up from 0.17 million to 0.39 million, or 132%, but that aligns with our budgeted capital transfers. And the transfers out have decreased from 6.9 to 5.2, or 24.9%, and that's also aligned with our budgeted transfers. Fully expect that we'll meet our 40% fund balance requirement by the end of the year. Moving on to the next page, those were the notes. This is a different representation of the same information, except broken out by department as opposed to expenditure category. You can see there's variances up and down in the various departments. Again, we're not seeing really anything unusual, and there's always a lot of timing differences early in the first quarter where some expenses are posted early, some are later, so over the year we expect those to even out. Moving on to the next page, you can see our fund balance. We've increased from last year from 82.5 million to 84.8 million, with 44.9 million assigned to cash flow and 30.1 million to economic stabilization. On to the cash balances report, you can see an increase from 54.5 million to 61.3 million, or 75 days, up from 72 days last year. So that's also a good result, looking in positive direction. So no worries there. If you go to the cash flow graph, this is one of my favorite graphs of this. It shows why we need sufficient fund balances to support the low times in the tax collection cycle. In addition to the normal report this time, we added the lodging excise tax forecast because it's been a fairly popular topic. You can see we've had a great rebound in our lodging excise tax, and if you recall, this is what we use to pay our bonds for the convention center. We went from 732,000 last year to 1.4 million this year, or up 91%. You can see our expenses are up as well because we pay Experience Grand Rapids based upon the percent of receipts. So very good progress in our lodging excise tax. And if you look at the last page, it talks about the balance owed to the general fund. We've loaned originally 7.1, they repaid 1.1, and then we put in another 4 million in 2020 during the big decline in taxes, or I'm sorry, the lodging excise taxes, yeah. So the outstanding balance is 10 million. We expect to start reimbursing the general fund in 2023 and then be fully reimbursed no later than 2032. So have to make that happen. So with that, happy to answer any questions.
While we're on this slide, Jeff, don't we have that payment due on 2031?
Correct. Yep.
So how does that work if that payment's due on 2031, but we're not expecting this to be fully reimbursed by that same date?
What we expect to do is take a little bit each year, starting in 2023, and then in 2032, when that final bond payment is paid off and we don't have that roughly $12 million payment, we'll be able to pay the full amount back in that 1 year, is what we're anticipating.
Okay, so we'll have that, the money for that final payment is coming from where again?
Be from the lodging excise tax receipts. Normally, it would go to a bond payment of 12 million roughly by that time, 2031, plus the payment to Experience Grand Rapids. Well, in 2032, we won't have that bond payment anymore, but we'll still have the full 13 or so million. I don't have the revenue estimates in front of me. Whatever the receipts are that year should be around 12 to 13 million. We'll have that full amount available to pay back the general fund in full.
But, I mean, there's a significant amount due on 2031, right?
Correct. Yep. So 2031, we'll just take the small portion to pay the general fund back again, that installment. And then the next year, the 2032, we'll have the full amount available because there won't be a bond payment in that year.
Got it. All right, questions? Go ahead, Commissioner Wooden.
Thank you, Chair. Two quick questions. First, regarding the revenue decrease from last quarter in terms of tax collection, the timing of tax collections themselves, but since the schedule of property tax collections has remained the same, could you explain a little bit more about how that happened?
Yeah, it's a little unusual. I haven't really seen this before since I've been here, so we talked to the treasurer. There's some accruals at year end, and every year the accruals can change a bit depending on when the receipts have come in, the timing of it. So there's always year-end adjustment entries. So again, it's a little unusual, but we fully expect it to resolve itself in the next quarter. So.
Understood, gotcha. And then my second question, I'm looking at the fund balance graph, and I see in 2019, we hit the target pretty much right on the money, that dotted line of our fund balance policy. But I'm seeing now more and more, we seem to be significantly over that. But, it looks like in 2021, it was close to, it was just a significant jump above that line, and I'm just wondering, is there a reason, unlike in 2019, where when we had that kind of additional revenue at the end of the year, we didn't put that, in 2019, we put that in strategic capital so that we could keep it in a different savings account for other projects down the pike, and since we do have other capital projects that have needs right now, is there a reason we haven't continued that practice in 2020 and 2021?
So if I recall correctly, I know we did put 10 million in at the end of 2021 into strategic capital, and I believe that came from this body as a motion. The year before, I'm trying to remember, and Marvin, correct me, I think we put in 5 million in 2020 to strategic capital. So we have continued that practice with the CARES money, as Commissioner Antor, the extra money received. There was I think a $6 million surplus in 2020, if I recall, which brought that fund balance up a bit. Last year in 21, we're anticipating, I believe it's about a 2.2 million. I could look it up. Similar to that. So we have been transferring a significant portion of the surpluses that we've been seeing to the strategic capital to prevent future deficit spending.
But we also still have a fair amount of surplus between that minimum 40% and what our fund balance is at the end of the year.
We
by
are
the
a
end
little
of the
bit
year.
above it, correct?
Yeah.
I want to say it was around 42% at the end of 2021, maybe.
Okay.
43. So slightly above it, but as our general fund expenditures continue to grow, especially in this inflationary time, we'd like to see that growth to hedge against, to make sure we meet our 40%. So
That makes perfect sense. I was more curious why we seem to be creeping up above that amount, but that makes sense. Thank you.
Commissioner Antor?
Thank you, Chair. Jeff, I was just curious about I know we have our AAA bond rating that saves us a lot of money on projects as we get these bonds. All indicators that our interest rates are going to start going up in the near future, and we don't know how high, and I know you don't have a crystal ball, but is there anything out there pending where any projects that we're figuring on bonding out where it might be a good move to move them up in the process while the rates are still relatively low, as opposed to waiting for increases that are?
right now, we don't have anything immediately pending for future bonding that I'm aware of. I know the drain commissioner has a NAP drain project that it'll be paid for by the city of Grand Rapids, but it would probably be run through the drain commission. I believe that's estimated at about $6 million. So I think that's coming up shortly. Other than that, I think the only other thing we've noted is potentially the Sustainable Business Park, but they're not near ready to be in that phase yet.
Okay.
The other thing I've heard is potentially the airport doing some future projects, but again, they're in the middle of their Concourse A expansion, and they're not at that next step yet where they need to bond for additional projects. So
That sound about right? We don't have any, I thought we had something pending a little quicker than that, but maybe not.
not to my knowledge.
Okay, all right, thanks, Jeff.
Hey, Commissioner Bolkowski? Your turn.
Thank you,
You
Chair.
gonna softball me questions like you do with Matt, or?
Totally. Yeah, why are we still checking the corners next to trees? But anyways, no, that's a question for Matt. Little surveying humor there for those at home. But in all seriousness, during my day job, we have this weird contract through the state of Michigan that's 20 years old, and I've been the only one at the table for 20 years, and believe it or not, I speak in circles, and people complain that I confuse them when I try to explain things to them. And so I was challenged to create a presentation core funding for kindergartners. And believe it or not, I succeeded. And my challenge is, this is semi-meaningful for me as a commissioner. I would bet for the average person out there, this is probably less than, it's just, and especially with our upcoming branding conversation, loud and clear that we present as bureaucrats, as a county array of services. And so I don't know that the challenge, it's not a question, but the challenge is county financing for kindergartners. What is that one page, especially now, first quarter? You have so many notes on the first quarter when your overall report is, hey, don't worry, we're right on track. Everything's tracking, a few things up, a few things down. And so how to really present that to the citizens and maybe a few commissioners on here's really where our finances are, as opposed to, it's number 16 of 22 page, I don't know what number it is, but the general fund chart. And I have to do the math. Is this good or bad? And especially with the COVID years, lodging excise tax. Should I compare this to 18, 19, or 21? So anyways, I think that challenge, maybe working with Lori and a really good focus group of citizens who know nothing about budgeting, so that we can explain what this means to me and others. So again, I totally trust this is true. I totally trust your staff's doing a good job. It's just in the communication, this Greek is Greek. So anyways, that's my tirade for the morning. In all of that, please hear a thank you for your fine work in staying on top of this. That's the most important thing I'm saying. And then we'll worry about the presentation for kindergartners later.
If we do the kindergartner thing, can we work in treats and naps?
I'll make that motion, treats and naps. Sorry, Chair.
No, that's all right.
Yeah, and I've done different things in the past, like a popular annual financial report that's supposed to explain things more in layman's terms, but I found it's still all numbers, right? So it's difficult to explain a lot of complicated numbers, and fund accounting is not easy, regardless of how you present it. So, but we can look to try to do some different things potentially.
It's not your department. Inside the bubble.
I like my bubble.
Don't pop his bubble.
You must love your bubble. Because that's your job. But again, if people outside the bubble, that's who's paying for this. It's just that's who's paying for this, and if they can't understand it, then we are doomed. Because then people tell them falsehoods and they believe them. So we have to get the truth, that people get their arms around it. So again, there's a lot of truth here that we're doing great things. Again, don't get me wrong. I totally trust what staff's doing here and with your presentation, but we lose it in the presentation.
Well, just a thought on that. In the years I've been here, now that I have 8 under my belt, one of the reports that I find helpful for people who are interested in more detail about the county and have it make sense smoothly is what we present to the bond rating companies. And that has a lot of good information on it. Are we going to get that?
The financial overview you're speaking of?
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, we're doing that. I'm doing that presentation the end of May, I believe, to the full
Yeah.
board. Yeah.
That report that is presented to the bond rating companies, I find to do exactly what you just requested. Does it give the snapshot like this? Some of it is in here, isn't it, Jeff, for that?
It is, yeah, and I
Yeah.
have that book right here, but it's a lot thicker, but it has a lot of additional information like county demographics. It's got recent news events, historical numbers for tax collections and union contracts. I mean, it covers pretty much any question that the rating agencies would ever ask.
Well, and I think it does it in a manner that is understandable. I don't think that's written in a confusing manner, and it provides overviews, and maybe using that as a guide, something similar with bullet points that maybe just aren't as detailed, or you highlight one section of this in that, and that would kind of do what you're looking for. Maybe, you know, just thinking out of the box too, you have one area that you detail and then have some more conversations with Jeff where we go back and forth with him to make sure everybody's on the same page, get the wording, like I said, engage Lori, engage Al, and have it make more sense. I think that document is amazing, and we could bounce off that a little bit more to incorporate this. And that's just, I think that the vehicle is already there. We just might want to add a special feature, taking your idea and kind of putting into that next step, how do we execute it? Because I think that document is absolutely fabulous to do exactly what you said.
I think the other thing, the Max video had a big impact. I had people from other counties, I even had somebody from my family the next day texting me, hey, can I get that video? Then we got it up online. Now, obviously, we didn't cover all the county in the video, but putting a face on what we do is what we're talking about. We do thousands of things, so, I mean, so we do have folks that are gonna think, well, geez, we can't do this because of, we can't tell the story of thousands of things, but we can boil it down into the main things and maybe highlight, 20 to 50 things we do that are real, that cover the gamut of county service, that starts to put a face on county government for people. I used to call county government the best kept secret in government because we're huge, but we don't deal like cities, townships, and villages do to the same extent with people at the face-to-face level. I mean, we are the social safety net. We provide certain things that address certain populations, but when you look at our entire population, you're looking at sheriff, parks are kind of the areas where we have the most connectivity, and otherwise it's more special populations that need certain services. So, but I think we hear you, and we'll put our minds to that and see what we can do to start to put a better face on what people are funding, what are they getting through the budget.
Commissioner Green?
Thank you, Chair. If this sounds like a dissenting opinion from Commissioners Wachowski and Chair Jones, it's not intended to be, but I see this as not an either or, but a both and, because as a policymaker or decision maker, I like to see what you've presented, Jeff, the bubble look, right? I think that's really good for our purposes, but I'd also like to see something that we can take out and explain, because I can understand most of this. I'm not fluent in public finance necessarily, but I speak it conversationally, right? But I don't know necessarily how to take that back to constituents in a meaningful way. So I think that's the challenge. How do we get all
Because we
these?
visit Jeff's bubble, we don't live in Jeff's bubble.
Correct, yeah. So, but I think I'd like to say that while I agree with what's being said, I also appreciate the detail that your team puts into these reports. So thank you.
Yeah, and actually, this is a required report, basically, from the rating agencies like to see it, our auditors like to see it, so they know that the board's informed of the finances of the county, so.
Okay, anyone else? All right, thank you very much, Jeff. Let's move on to Commissioner Miscellaneous. What Commissioner Miscellaneous do we have this morning? Go ahead, Commissioner Bukowski.
First, you got the invitation via Lisa for the ribbon cutting next Thursday, the 12th at 4. Words at 5, so if you want to miss it, come earlier after 5 at Special Olympics and Disability Advocates. Sad news, Chair Jones, my haircut was postponed to August, so I'll keep you posted on that. And last but not least, Commissioner Womack pointed out that the minority party's in the majority today, so I don't know what kind of motions we could make. Could we spend some fund balance or something? I don't know.
We're
So
at
just
miscellaneous.
We're
so-
Is it too late? Is it too late for a motion?
Chair, I'd like to adjourn.
Yeah, not yet. Not adjourning quite yet. I do have some miscellaneous myself.
Thank you, Commissioner Antor, for
Yes.
reining me in. Thank you.
So I heard from our auditor, the audit is in process, and one of the pieces that this committee may or may not know is every year the auditor calls the chair and wants to know if I have any reason to believe of any area of concern or any fraudulent areas, and the answer has been the same, I don't. One area that I do always share with them, having had 8 years of experience under my belt, is to make sure that they discuss and look at the area of receivables. We did have areas a number of years ago where there was a receivable issue with HUD. So it is an area that I like them to look at, and that's the only comment that I make. So I just thought I'd let everyone know that that's what I tell our auditors when they call me. And then I answer the rest of their questions on if I have any reasons to believe there's fraudulent issues is no, because I don't. But that is something that I thought was worth commenting in miscellaneous. And with that, we are adjourned, and our next meeting is Tuesday, May 17th at 8:30 a.m.